be available this evening. First on the agenda, we have public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, I'll move on to communications, which we have none. There are no applications tonight, no appointments by the mayor, no unfinished business, so we will move straight into new business resolutions. R17-119, relative to a ballot referendum to allow Keno within the city of Nashua. Do I have a motion? Alderman Lopez.
I'd like to move to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage. And I will open up the floor for discussion on this. Does anybody have any comments or questions or anything like that? Although I was not at the meeting, I did get to read the minutes of the meeting when we had the lottery commissioner here. It seems pretty a pretty straightforward bill. The thing that, to me is this is a referendum, so ultimately the citizens of Nashua will decide this. So I have no problem moving this forward and letting them decide. Alderman Lopez?
I guess my position is that basically the citizens have an opportunity to make their decision on this, and they should. I know personally I won't use it. I have terrible luck, so I in no way see myself actually using a Keno. But I also know that the businesses downtown and the restaurants, they could probably use another element to their business. Every amenity helps. The jukeboxes kind of came in as a big fad, and people love using those. Again, not going to really do that myself. Same thing with karaoke and every other thing, but I think if the people of Nashua want to weigh in on this and decide whether this is a feature that they want to have, they're welcome to do that. I support that.
Alderman LeBron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no problem sending it to referendum. Personally, I would never vote for any kind of gambling, but, I'll leave it up to the citizens. If they decide that's what they want, then that's all well and good with me. I'm just not a gambler, have never been a gambler, and I will never vote for any kind of gambling. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Karen?
Yeah, I'll add to that. Although I did vote for the casinos, and, I think it's important that the people of the city weigh in on this, and so I think it's great. And I did ask our city clerk earlier about the question, and it's just that one line, yes or no, for the gambling. So that should make it easy for everyone to read. Thank you.
I think with Nashua having two casinos and it's within its city limits, I think it's an important proposition to allow people to weigh in on, in addition to the other establishments that will take advantage of this. We're right next to Massachusetts, which already has Keno, so we're in an advantageous spot to get this going. Plus, the money is going to go to kindergarten, which is a very good cause. So, in addition to supporting this, I'll probably vote for it myself. Anything further? If not, the motion is to recommend final passage of R17-119. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, and the motion carries. Next, we will move on to R17-122, which is establishing a performance arts steering committee. Do I have a motion on that? Alderman Lopez.
I'd like to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage of R17-122. And I noticed that Mr. Cummings was in the audience. Did you want to come forward and sort of introduce this?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Tim Cummings. I'm the Director of Economic Development for this city. I'm here before you to talk a little bit about the resolution in front of you, which is an organizational tool to run in parallel with the funding, not to be overly presumptuous, and I'm not sure what the will is of this body, but to be as efficient as possible, the administration felt it prudent to put before the body an organizational tool to help guide the Performing Arts Center conversation should it proceed and move forward. So the resolution basically creates a steering committee with a charge to outline the operational structure as well as the design and oversee the design planning and construction. This is an advisory body that would report to the Board of Aldermen. I do have one issue that has been brought to my attention that I want to make you aware of. Both the Downtown Improvement Committee and the Arts Commission have reached out and expressed a desire to see their membership bump up by one. So I'm not sure if if it's appropriate for this body to entertain an amendment to that resolution, but we're supportive of that. We put this piece of legislation together with the condensed timeline being summertime. We filed it and solicited comments at the same time. We think that adding one person for the Arts Commission and one person from the Downtown Improvements Committee will only make for a stronger steering committee. So, Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, we would like to see that amendment proceed. Otherwise, I'm available to take any questions.
Okay. Alderman Lopez?
I'd definitely be willing to make that amendment. My feeling is we need the steering committee ASAP. Personally, I have a lot of reservations about how this process has been proceeding. I already spoke with Director Cummings at previous meetings about making sure that we weren't just going to try to sign a blank check for $15 million. We were going to have a plan. We were going to figure out how to offset costs, reduce the burden that we would just have to borrow. And I kind of was open about that since we even started with the presentation in the Performing Arts Center. My recollection is the Performing Arts study had really been emphasizing the value of a performing arts district until Alex became available, and then it seemed their suggestion changed radically to include and basically revolve around the Alex Shoe Store. I don't necessarily have a problem with the Alex Shoe Store as a location. I really want to see something go into that location which is successful, vibrant, and effective. And I actually do believe that a performing arts center could be that thing. But I think we need somebody who is dedicated to several somebodies. This is a lot of work. Several people who are willing to advocate for this, who are willing to fundraise for this, who are willing to engage the fundraising community. Because asking for just a $15 million check to get it going, that we're not going to get back, in addition to the endowment that we have to hope the public will support, maintain, and whatever, is a lot to ask. I think the endowment and the design in general as presented is good. It looks like they planned for a sustainable program, and that the private donation section of the endowment will maintain the facility. I still kind of want more when it comes to borrowing the money to run it. So I think the steering committee answers that, in that if we get the steering committee formed, we get people who are focused on this task, and absolutely including Downtown Improvement Committee and the National Arts Commission, I think we'll have people who may come up with solutions that we have not yet generated, which will make it an easier prospect for both us on the aldermen and the taxpayers. I really want to see more development and progress taking place on this, and I think the steering committee is a great step towards doing that.
Great. Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you. Just quickly want to respond to two points that were just made. First, the idea of a district was actually an afterthought added into the report to make for a better product. The report in and of itself was a feasibility study for a performing arts center in the downtown. There was first the contemplation of a market and what that market looks like, and then secondly, the understanding of what the design and construction and business plan would be to make that work in a two-phased process. The Performing Arts Center would just be an anchor to a district. So, and I think the district of an arts district is very much what the vision of downtown is evolving into, and I want to continue encouraging that type of evolution and support cultural assets to be developed. And this is just a specific example of how that could be realized. Secondly, I want to make sure that this is clear. I've said this in previous meetings. The bond is for the capital improvements. The operational costs for the Performing Arts Center will not be borne onto the taxpayers of Nashua. The whole wisdom in capitalizing a $4 million fund is so that there isn't a subsidy necessary moving forward for the operations, and that's why we structured it in that manner. So I just want to make sure that that was clear for the record.
Did anybody else have a comment before?
I do.
Alderman
I mean,
Karen?
Right. I agree with Alderman Lopez in several aspects of this. I think having a committee to work on this is very important. I just don't want us rushing through this. I have spoken to the mayor about my reservations about this because I've seen us trying to bring in a small arts community and a arts center, and it went bust. And unless we have those private donations, this could fall on the taxpayers, and I don't want to see that. We have a lot of other things that we have to think about down the road. Alex is a great place, because it's in the center of the town. But my concern is, how are we going to sustain that? And I appreciate Mr. Cummings, speaking about that. We're looking at the facility itself and getting it ready, but if you don't have that money to run the facility, then it will fall back onto the city. And I think that's a very important thing to think about in having this group. And if it means adding 2 more, that is, they're going to really work on this, I don't have a problem with that.
Alderman LeBron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with both my colleagues as far as the steering committee, to establish a steering committee. I have no problem with that. I do, however, feel that this project is, at this time, unnecessary and probably unaffordable. And I echo Alderman Karen's thoughts that the taxpayer may end up paying for more of it than we foresee at this time. So for that reason, I will be voting to establish the committee, but I would not be able to vote to go ahead with this project.
Director Cummings?
Thank you. And I don't want to get too into the weeds on this because we're here tonight to talk about a resolution creating a steering committee, but I do want to make it clear for the record, the way the bond is currently written is the bond proceeds will not be released until the $4 million is actually capitalized, excluding money to actually procure the 201 Main Street building. So we are trying to build in as many safeguards as possible to warn against the concerns that have been raised here today. But again, Mr. Chairman, I know we're going to be having a lengthy discussion on this later on in the summer. So I appreciate the committee's time on this. We just want to keep the momentum going if there is a desire for us to move forward with this project.
Thank you. My question is not so much on the capital, or rather, the capital plan and that part of it, but more so on the front end, which is the design aspect. How involved do you see the committee getting on the design aspect of it, and what would be their ultimate goal?
So I'll answer that question in a couple parts. First, their ultimate goal is to make a recommendation to this body for final approval. So you wouldn't be, delegating that responsibility. Ultimately, the decision will rest with the Board of Aldermen. But with that being said, I fully expect the the steering committee to get into the weeds on the design aspects of the building. I don't want anyone to ever walk away saying that the director of economic development unilaterally designed the Performing Arts Center. So I think that they will be very involved, and I'm pretty sure, I don't have it in front of me, but the resolution actually articulates that as a charge that needs to be executed.
Yes, it does. Uh, Alderman Lopez?
I think the transparency that a steering committee would promote is also a very effective tool for the city, because, again, there's a disagreement over what we remember, but my recollection is very different from others, apparently, regarding the focus or emphasis placed on arts district versus locations. I had thought that the Court Street Theater was specifically recommended as a great resource and opportunity, and it was mentioned in the Performing Arts Center summary, kind of as an afterthought of, oh yeah, you could probably renovate this for $2 million, $2.5 million, around that. Which, I think the Performing Arts Center study, as I recall it, I was pretty involved with it at the grassroots level when we were originally discussing it with the community and inviting the arts organizations. There was a lot of interest in renovating the Court Street, because a lot of the programs are smaller and they want to do regular, consistent shows, and they want to have access to a space that lets them put on a decent show without all of the headaches that they experience at Court Street. And I want to make sure that we're being true to that population. My opinion is that the proposal as it was presented for Alex, is bigger than a lot of the local organizations would regularly use. So it would be for a different attractive population, which does have economic value. It would bring in a new destination. It would bring in new shows and that kind of stuff. But I really want to make sure that, as Alderman Wilshire pointed out when they did the presentation, we can't keep showing the arts community that we're not ready for action and that we're not ready to serve them. We have an opportunity to engage the arts community and really give them the resources that they need to speak. And I think we should make sure that we get this right. I think we should make sure that their voice is heard in all of this. And if I recall it inaccurately, and the Peacock players and the other organizations that would use Court Street come forward and say, yeah, we absolutely want this to be done this way, we're not worried about Court Street as a priority, I think the steering committee might be a good venue for them to do that, for them to have that say, and also to see how the plans are being made, and so that there's no concerns about sudden course corrections or anything like that. So again, I really think that the steering committee is the best step for right now, so that we can make sure that this is going the direction that the arts community needs it to.
I don't necessarily disagree with the statements that are being said, but I look at it as an opportunity. With a steering committee in place that's looking particularly focused on 201 Main Street, I feel that we have the opportunity to really hone in on something that could be a great facility, and you're right, it would be probably bigger than some of the community groups would use. Excuse me, would use on a regular basis, but I also believe that the opportunity that it presents is that if we can really hone down on it, there might be an opportunity there to, if and this is a big if, but if the cost comes down, there might be an opportunity to do something with Court Street after. If we're going to appropriate $15 million, and this group can get Alex down by a couple million, perhaps the steering committee could then be refocused on, well, we have $2 million more, maybe Court Street is something to look at. But again, that's far in the future. But you can't have those discussions unless you start somewhere. And I think this committee is a really good place to start. I think the Alex or 201 Main Street location is a really good place to start this conversation of how we want the arts to move forward in Nashua. I think there is a overwhelming majority of people that want to see something downtown. And I think we're in a really good position to get that done. And I wouldn't want to see the opportunity slip away. So my suggestion, I'm going to make a motion to add 2 additional people to the committee. One, so we would add 1 additional person from the Downtown Improvement Committee and 1 additional person from the Arts Commission. So that is my motion. Do we have any discussion on that?
You don't need a second, right?
Why are you making a motion on a resolution that's on new business?
No, I'm making a motion to amend the R17-122.
Okay, but you're also amending the Downtown Improvement Committee, you said.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay,
My motion is to add 1 other member from the Downtown Improvement Committee to the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee,
okay.
and 1 other member from the Arts Commission to the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee. So to make the total 3 from each of those groups. So that's the motion. Are we all clear on that? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that motion carries. And so now the motion before us is to recommend final passage of R17-122 as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that motion carries. And Director Cummings, do you want to stay for the next couple of? Okay. Next, we have R17-123, establishing a Nashua Rail Transit Committee. Do I have a motion on that? Alderman Lopez?
For final passage?
Motion is to recommend final passage of R17-123. Do we have, I'm going to give it the floor to you so you can introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. What you have before you is a resolution calling for the creation of a transit committee that would study rail here in the city of Nashua. We would be looking to bring together a broad-based group of local opinion leaders, stakeholders, people vested in this area to help promulgate some recommendations ultimately to this body and to the mayor to address the passenger rail question that has been brought to our attention. As some of you may know, the governor has made some comments publicly about entertaining the idea of doing an incremental Lowell to Nashua type approach. We feel that is something that we should help support and explore, and this type of group will help in that conversation.
Great. Alderman Lopez?
Kind of favor this for the same reasoning as the last one. The more public buy-in and engagement you get, the more diversity of ideas. Rail has been coming up repeatedly for years. For the most part, people would love in a moneyless society to have the convenience and amenity of rail. Most of the biggest concerns are, how do we make sure this is solvent? Where's the money going to come from? I think a steering committee would be the opportunity for people who are the most passionate about it to answer those questions and explore them. So I think it's a good exercise. I think it would bring people who are passionate about this and maybe resourceful enough to pull it off into an organized existence that's, again, transparent, led by the city of Nashua. I see it as having a lot of possibilities.
Alderman LeBron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just an exploratory committee, so My opinion, have at it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll say I think this is a great idea, and I think unfortunately it's one we should have come up with a long time ago, um, but I think I really do think it's a great idea. I think I've said for a long time that, Nashua needs to take this initiative up on its own. I felt that way for a very long time. Um, because we just we run into roadblocks at the legislature, and that's because the rest of the state doesn't see the value in it. Some of the state already has rail, like Claremont or Dover or Exeter, Durham, and then some of the state doesn't see the need for it at all. So, Nashua, I think we're in a unique position to, especially with the governor saying, at least, that he would explore or be open to exploring a Nashua only option on the rail. I think we need to take him at his word that he truly believes that, is open to exploring it, and I think this committee would be a good start for that. So, with that said, I'm definitely going to support this, and I hope that it bears fruit. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is to recommend final passage. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, and that motion carries. And so now, we will move to new business ordinances. And we have ordinance 17041, which is amending the composition and purpose of the Downtown Improvements Committee. Do I have a motion? Alderman Lopez?
I feel like I'm pitching a no-hitter here. I'd like to recommend final passage.
Our motion is to recommend final passage of 017041. Director Cummings?
Again, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. This is just a simple tweak to our ordinance to allow for a couple more voices onto the Downtown Improvement Committee. As some of you may know, the mayor has been going out and talking to folks either through differing ward meetings or at his monthly coffee hours where he has open office hours in the downtown. Some voices and residents, including Michael Buckley, have expressed an interest in getting involved in the Downtown Improvement Committee. Seeing and hearing that type of support, we thought it would be great to just add a couple more people onto this group of hardworking downtown enthusiasts.
Great. Alderman Lopez?
As the alderman serving downtown, I've heard a lot of feedback from the restaurants, particularly, that they would want to be represented on Downtown Improvement Committee. I have also not seen a lot of them just leap forward and say, "I will spend the time on that." So I definitely appreciate Michael Buckley taking the lead on that. I think expanding the Downtown Improvement Committee it makes complete sense because there's a lot of businesses downtown. There's a lot of factors and issues that downtown is facing right now, and I think really engaging the business community in a way that helps them all work cooperatively towards that with the city, it's a great idea.
Being on the Downtown Improvement Committee, serving on it, being the architect of the original legislation as well, I certainly support this. I also support, there is a change in Section A, and that is the committee shall provide recommendations on matters impacting downtown. The committee does that anyway, so adding that language, I think, is just codifying what the committee already does. I did speak to the chairman and to a couple other members who wanted the committee to weigh in on this before we moved it forward. And not that they had any reservations or anything like that, but they just felt that it was appropriate that since this obviously affects the committee and its makeup and things like that, that they at least weigh in on it. And so, what I would recommend is that we hold this here. I don't think that it's pressing of a matter that it has to be done at the next Board of Aldermen meeting. And so what I would do is recommend that we hold this, let the committee weigh in on it, and then we can bring it back once we get a recommendation. Alderman Lopez?
It's a good idea, and I would be very interested in seeing what comments are made and what exactly the committee decides. It seems apparently obvious to me that this would be a great move, but I would love to see what their feedback is.
Alderman Karen?
Yeah, I agree with Alderman Lopez. I think it's important that the committee looks at that, because you want to add people, but if you don't get them and they're not really committed to the project, what's the point of having them? So I think this is great, and I have no problem with holding this in committee.
Any other comments? I would make a motion to table 017-041. Alderman Lopez?
May I just ask if you happen to know when the next Downtown Improvement Committee meeting is? What time, where, all that?
I know it's the second Friday of the month, so it would be September at this point.
8th.
September 8th? Okay.
And where do they meet usually and when?
In the morning, 7:45, room 208.
As the Ward 4 Alderman, I of course know that. I was asking
Of
for the
course.
ultimate.
Motion is to table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and the motion carries. Director Cummings, thank you very much for coming this evening. So now we have discussion. Is there any general discussion? Seeing none, public comment. Please.
Real quick, Michael Joseph, recently just moved to Ward 4. I live across the street at 184 Main. I just want to commend you on establishing the rail committee. I think it's an important aspect. Many of us feel that that option is important for people who want to get into Boston. And as someone who does it on a fairly regular basis, having to go to Lowell to pick up the train is a little bit inconvenient. The only statement I have about that for convenience is the fact that the train provides a different mode of transportation in that it operates on a track that is not subject to road traffic as bus services, and so that it's an efficient and convenient and comfortable way. Sure, cost is a factor, but I think it's nice to hop on a train in Nashua and land in North Station. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, thank you. Remarks by the Alderman? Alderman Lopez?
We have a lot of new committees that were started in this meeting, and I think this should be very interesting. I am very much in favor of community engagement, bringing new ideas to the table, and I really want to see how these different groups proceed. I do really hope that the Commuter Rail Transit Committee manages to do something or develop a model, if they are going to move forward, that isn't just let's bond it, because we were talking a lot about having a steering committee and building momentum, and momentum's great until you hit a bunch of potholes, and we bonded a whole bunch of roads because there's potholes everywhere. And I think if that's not a metaphor, then nothing is. I think these committees, we need to have more direct community involvement on the steering wheel, and they will help us come up with models that will work for performing arts, engaging the artists, and work for commuter rail, really serving the populations that are intended.
Any other remarks by Alderman? There is no non-public session. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Motion by
Perfect
Alderman
record.
LeBron is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 8:05.
I was on a streak, you ruined it.